Number 10. Father. Father was the only name we had for one of the scientists behind the mad science secret robotics project known as Project Descendant. Father, Mother, and Brother were the code names for the scientists behind the project, which ended up creating a race of synthetic beings deemed as hybrid. Due to the three team leaders bickering, the beings they created ended up being released out into the world. Later, the Father would attempt to lure the descendants of these beings back and would also go on to work on expanding the Deathlock project, aiming ambitiously to connect all the Deathlock versions of superhumans, joining them together to build a better world. It was during this time that he crossed paths with the very secretive X-Force, which at the time was led by Wolverine, who had refused Cyclops' orders to disband the team, keeping it going in secret.
Number 9. The Melter. Bruno Horgan was once an American industrialist specializing in weapons for the US military until a government inspection revealed he was using shoddy materials, and you can probably guess why that's not really good. Tony Stark scooped up his defense contracts because, you know, his weapons actually worked, and a bankrupt Horgan decided the only rational thing to do was to blame Tony for sabotaging his work and ruining his life. Luckily for him, and unlucky for literally everyone else, he found himself among his ruined company's assets a weapon prototype that generated a beam capable of melting iron on contact, and this began his evil reign as the Melter. Tony was able to defeat this villain pretty easily, however, he was still deemed enough of a threat to create a new suit made out of aluminum, and good thing he did because in his second encounter with the Melter, that completely saved him. Skip ahead a little bit and we see the Melter return with a new version of his melting ray and team up with Whiplash and the Blizzard to take down Tony Stark under the orders of Justin Hammer. Tony was able to overcome all three of the villains alongside Cable, and Horgan was sent to Rikers Island, where he met a nuclear physicist that helped him further augment his equipment so that it would work against Iron Man's aluminum armor. Fast forward just a little bit more and we see the Melter reach the end of his journey at the hands of Scourge, who was posing as his assistant. Take a look at this character story for yourself, starting with 1963's Tales of Suspense number 47. Number 8. Gargantus. Before Iron Man found his groove fighting industrial spies and the occasional world conqueror, he was stuck duking it out with alien robots like Gargantus. Created by an unknown and unnamed alien race that had been scouting the Earth for the past 80,000 years, Gargantus was built in the image of a Neanderthal because that was the only species that the aliens had encountered. It first arrived in the town of Granville and used its hypnotizing eyes to conquer the townspeople, but the aliens' plans were quickly foiled by Iron Man, who was alerted by the invasion because one of the young women trapped by Gargantus didn't show up for their date, and nobody stands up Tony Stark, so he knew something was up. After a little back and forth with the robot, Tony figured out that Gargantus was actually a robot and decided to surround it with powerful magnets that tore it apart completely because, you know, magnets. After the aliens realized that maybe the Earth's defenses are too good, they decide to fly away and we don't hear about them again until 1999's Captain America, Sentinel of Liberty Volume 1 number 5. Fun fact, Gargantus is technically the first villain Iron Man ever faced, so why not check it out in its first appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 40, and let me know what you think of this caveman robot in the comments below. Number 7. Termite. I'm sure we all know the classic way that most people gain their powers in comics, you know, an accident happens and instead of dying, they gain abilities. Pretty standard, right? Well, I think Marvel was a little bit tired of that because Neil Donaldson was just born with his ability to disintegrate whatever he touches. After discovering his powers, he was hired by Obadiah Stane to eliminate the competition. However, James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, quickly got word of this and set out to take the Termite down. During his third fight with the villain, the first two ending with the Termite escaping, Rhodes was seemingly evenly matched with him until Tony Stark showed up with the mutant power neutralizer and shot the Termite with it, removing his powers completely, allowing him to be arrested and taken to jail. Word of this got back to Stane and he hired the Enforcer to take him out. However, the Enforcer was taken out first by the Scourge of the Underworld, so basically the Termite was saved completely by accident. The Termite was later seen sulking in jail, and that's really the last we've seen of him. Check out this villain for yourself in his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 189. Number 6. VIBRO. Alton VIBRO was your average seismologist until he fell into the San Andreas Fault while testing an experimental machine, and of course he ends up with super vibrating powers because this is the Marvel Universe, and like I said a little bit ago, if you have an accident in the Marvel Universe, then you're probably going to end up with some sick powers. These powers allowed Alton to generate high-level seismic vibrations and fire them from his hands, causing shockwaves, opening chasms, and generating earthquakes. Thinking his employer Frankenfortney was to blame for his accident, he sought revenge on him and thus began his villain career as VIBRO. After 2 battles with James Rhodes, the acting Iron Man at the time, VIBRO was eventually taken down with the help of Tony Stark in the Mark I Iron Man armor. VIBRO hasn't only been a problem for Iron Man though, and he has also gone up against the Falcon, Nomad, S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers West Coast, and even Wolverine. We later see him team up with the Mandarin alongside a bunch of other Avengers to once again try and take down the Armored Avenger. Making his first appearance all the way back in 1984's Iron Man number 186, why not give this villain story a read for yourself? Number 5, Doctor Strange. Now, I know what you're thinking, and no, I'm not talking about Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme and Master of the Mystic Arts. I'm talking about Carlos Strange, who made his first and last appearance all the way back in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 41. Carlos Strange was just your typical mad scientist, creating and concocting all manners of weaponry in his mountain hideout when a lightning bolt struck him, increasing the electrical energy inside his brain, making him smarter and even madder than before. 6 months after the whole lightning incident, Strange built an ultra-frequency transmitter from radio and television parts and used it to take mental control of Iron Man, forcing him to free him from his prison so he can enact his plan to take over the world and just give it to his daughter. Threatening to destroy the entire planet in 24 hours unless every nation surrenders to him, he launched a powerful bomb into the atmosphere to demonstrate just how serious he was. Iron Man quickly found his way to Strange's new hideout in the Atlantic and destroyed his main power source, effectively ruining his plan. With no other option, Strange withdrew and escaped custody, and we're honestly not too sure what he's cooking up now. Check out his story for yourself and let me know what you think of his character in the comments below. Number 4, the Chessmen. Like so many criminal masterminds out there, Obadiah Stane was a bit too obsessed with the whole chess as a metaphor for controlling lives thing. So much so that he hired assassins who literally dressed themselves as chess pieces, you know, like pawns, bishops, knights, and rooks, with him acting as their king. The knight got a flying robot horse, the rook used a castle full of death traps, and the bishop, well, now that I think about it, he didn't do a whole lot. He was really only able to manipulate his opponent's actions. One by one, the chessmen went up against Iron Man, with none of them actually succeeding in taking him down. However, that didn't seem to be Stane's plan. The string of encounters and events actually led to Tony's addiction to alcohol to worsen, and this allowed him to buy Stark Industries and push Tony out of the Iron Man mantle for a while. Tony eventually got his act together and went up against the chess-themed team once more and emerged victorious, with Stane taking his own life with a repulsor blast. Check out these villainous pawns for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1982's Iron Man number 163. Number 3, Mr. Doll. Now I know what you're thinking, and no, his first name wasn't Ken, that would just be way too good of a joke. Nathan Dawley was a pretty average dealer in curios and art objects until he came across an extraordinary doll during his time in Africa. He discovered that he could reshape this doll to resemble whomever he wanted, and that he could cause that person to feel immense pain by manipulating the doll's features. He decided the best way to use his new voodoo doll was to coerce rich business people into legally signing over control of their business to him, which worked pretty great for him until he decided to go after Tony Stark. Tony found it tough to fight against this villain because initially he was unable to withstand the pain caused by the doll. So in true Tony Stark fashion, he built a suit just for the occasion. Now able to withstand the power, Tony used a force beam to change the doll's likeness into that of Mr. Doll's, and the immense pain this caused Mr. Doll caused him to pass out, allowing for his capture and arrest. Fast forward a bit and we see Mr. Doll once again, however this time his consciousness is trapped and split between two mannequins, Jake and William, aka the Brothers Grimm. This didn't last for too long though, because he was eventually beaten by Spider-Woman and his consciousness dispersed for good. Take a look at the voodoo doll wielding Mr. Doll for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 48. Number 2, the Unicorn. Milos Masaryk was a Soviet intelligence agent assigned to security detail at the laboratory of an inventor who was developing advanced weaponry. One of the inventor's projects was a helmet that could discharge destructive energy blasts from something called the Power Horn, and Milos came into possession of this helmet after his inventor hightailed it to the US, thus starting his mission as the Unicorn of avenging the disgrace caused by the inventor's defection. His first encounter with Iron Man really isn't much to write home about since Tony let the villain walk away scot-free. However, several months later, after a not so healthy dose of brainwashing and augmentation, Milos returned to the US with the goal of doing whatever it takes to reverse an unfortunate side effect of his treatment. However, Iron Man was able to thwart his plans once again. The Unicorn teamed up with the Red Ghost, the Mandarin, and even Titanium Man, all of them promising to find a cure for him if he defeated Iron Man. However, obviously none of them were actually going to follow through with that. Flash forward a bit and we see the Unicorn once again make his way to the US to bring down Stark Tower alongside Spymaster and some other baddies. This was a bit of a weird time for Iron Man and the Unicorn because near the end of this arc, the two actually ended up teaming up to take down Captain Atlas. However, after they were done, they went back to being not so friendly with each other. Take a look at this magically named villain for yourself, starting with their first appearance all the way back in 1964's Tales of Suspense number 56. Number 1, the Blood Brothers. Like so many great Marvel heroes before him, there was a brief time when Iron Man was flying around having cosmic adventures with space aliens. When Thanos first appeared in the Iron Man comics, we were introduced to some of his henchmen as well, two of them being the Blood Brothers, Guri and Rahas Blood. The alien siblings acted as Thanos' guardians of his Earth base. However, they were easily defeated by the Thing and Iron Man, and this just disgusted Thanos to the core, so he sent them away for a while to an unknown location. Years later, they they made it back to Earth to try and get revenge on Iron Man, but they were defeated once again and ended up locked in Rikers Island. Fast forward a little bit and we see Rahas die and Guri go on solo, eventually becoming a part of the Hood's criminal army. Guri later had his cosmic potential unleashed, and this gave him a crazy power-up, and he became one of these Slaughter Lords under the name Brother Blood. Now it's not really said when, but at some point Rahas came back to life and the Blood Brothers reunited once again and joined a new incarnation of the Lethal Legion as a part of a contest that was assembled by the Grand Master. All of these fights around the world were thwarted by the Avengers though, including the Blood Brothers fight in Rome, and the Lethal Legion regrouped, escaped to nowhere, and decided to stay together as a team just to see what they could accomplish together. Check out this villainous brotherly bond for yourself, starting with 1973's Iron Man number 55, and try to name a better duo in the comments. Oh wait.
10. MINDWORM. MINDWORM, aka William Turner, but not the William Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean, is very powerful with his mind, allowing himself to read people's thoughts, drain people's energy, and create illusions. MINDWORM has a very large head and brain that he was born with. At one time, he was neighbors to Flash Thompson and Peter Parker when he moved in with Flash. Since MINDWORM was always feeding off people's minds, it was no surprise that he was trying to feed off of Peter's mind as well. But since Peter's so smart, he could fight off MINDWORM's attack to his mind. This upset MINDWORM, and he later fought Peter, but of course he was unsuccessful and lost. MINDWORM used this as an opportunity to figure out why he was even doing this, and after taking a hard look at himself, and realizing that his anger was coming from what happened to his parents, he makes peace with Peter, and he even uses his slogan, "With great power comes great responsibility." Unfortunately, MINDWORM's story doesn't end great, since criminals manipulate him back to a life of crime, and he went back to prison, and afterwards he was killed by a group of people on the street. It's pretty depressing.
Number 9. Brothers of the New World. Wolverine ended up fighting and taking out pretty much all of this group because they kidnapped and killed his friend Lucy, who tried to escape them. They were a cult whose leader, Cry, kept a harem of women at their base. Wolverine set about attacking the cult and killing all of its members right around the time one of the women attempted to escape, who was actually a government agent who had been investigating the cult before being taken herself and added to their numbers of imprisoned women. This group of villains made an appearance during the first story arc of the 2003 Wolverine series entitled Brotherhood. Oh, also they were in part created by Greg Rucka, fun fact.
Number 8. The Living Brain. So the Living Brain was created by the character Dr. Petty, and is basically an artificial intelligence robot machine. There was nothing that the Living Brain couldn't solve. So when it was brought to a high school, it gave 2 people a pretty good idea of what they could do with this crazy robot. They had the idea to steal it and use it for whatever they would go out and gamble. They attempted to steal it, but Dr. Petty didn't want to lose his creation and fought them off, and caused one of them to hit the Living Brain, damaging it and causing it to lose control of itself. It then turned on everyone and was on a mission to destroy, but luckily Spider-Man defeated it and saved the day. The Living Brain has appeared several times after this by, people either trying to use it to take down bullies or try to rob banks. The Living Brain was even part of the Sinister Six at one point. Number 7. Swarm. This is definitely a weird one. So are a lot of these ones on this list. So the Swarm was a Nazi scientist who survived World War II and was really into bees and poisons. He really wanted to try to make the bees he was finding very villainous and use them to his advantage. He discovered a beehive, and since he was trying to make them change their behavior, he was successful at doing that. But that is what ended up getting him killed by the bees and allowed the bees to use his consciousness and what was left of his body to become the Swarm. He has the abilities to fly and even turn as big or as small as he likes. He can also manipulate himself into different shapes. This makes it very hard for Spider-Man to fight him, since really he's just a swarm of bees. He also could control not only bees, but any type of insect. Number 6. Leapfrog. So Leapfrog, aka Vincent Patillo, loved to invent an assortment of just random items. He always wanted more though after every invention, and he was never really satisfied. That is, until he developed this invention so that he would be able to leap several stories in the air. He used this invention and created a suit to become the Leapfrog. This is how he began to get into the criminal world, but he didn't have the greatest success there, and there's not a lot about him. Number 5. PLANTMAN. Samuel Smithers was obsessed with plants and even studied them throughout his jobs. He wanted to invent a device that allowed communication between plants and humans. He had been working on this ray gun that he thought could actually make it work and create this open line of communication. It was only when it was hit by lightning when it actually got the ability to control plants. He had superhuman strength and he has the ability to communicate and control plants. After he placed Captain America in a coma with his invention Pretty Poison, he got the attention of Spider-Man, who teamed up with the Falcon to take down PLANTMAN and get the cure for Captain America. Number 4. GRIZZLY. Maxwell Markham, aka GRIZZLY, is quite the strange supervillain. Basically, he looks like an actual grizzly bear in this mechanical suit. His story is that he used to be a wrestler until J. Jonah Jameson ruined his career with one article, which was the reason why he lost his license to be a pro wrestler. He wanted revenge on the man who ruined his career and later attacked the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man showed up and was able to take down GRIZZLY and sent him straight to prison. GRIZZLY had super strength, durability, and super sharp claws. Number 3. KANGAROO. Before Frank Oliver became the Kangaroo, he was just some guy who loved studying kangaroo back at his home of Australia. He used to be a boxer, but he got kicked out for how he fought and really hurt one of his other opponents. When he made his way over to America, he got quite into trouble and even caught the eye of Spider-Man, since Kangaroo had stolen an armored truck. But Spider-Man was able to apprehend him. Kangaroo later got surgery by Dr. Jonas Harrow, and this is what gave him his powers where he can actually leap like a kangaroo, but a lot higher and much further. Apparently, even before his surgery, he did have kind of some abilities where he could leap more so than the average human, but not to the extent of what the surgery gave him. Number 2. Big Wheel. Jackson Wheel, aka Big Wheel, got the Tinkerer to make him this big armored wheel that would, lead him to become the Big Wheel. This all started because Rocket Racer, someone he hired to find any dirt on himself, wanted more money for something extremely bad that he found on Wheel, something that would ruin his entire job in life. He found out about the Tinkerer from Rocket Racer, which led him to the creation of the armored wheel. He attacked Rocket Racer during a fight with Spider-Man. He almost killed Rocket Racer, but Spider-Man saved him, and then Big Wheel lost control, went into the river, and was later arrested and sent to prison. But don't worry, he was back to a life of crime shortly after that. They always do. Number 1. The Wall. Yes, there was a supervillain named The Wall that has gone up against Spider-Man in the past. And a little fun story, I remember hearing about this villain a few years ago from my friend who was going back and he was reading all of the original Amazing Spider-Man issues. I remember he sent me a picture while he was reading it, and I literally could not stop laughing because his slogan was, "This is one wall you will never crawl." I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, it's kind of amazing. Like, he's definitely one of the most weird and just strange supervillains that Spider-Man has ever gone up against. Okay, so a little backstory. Joshua Waldemeier, wow, had the job of laying bricks down, and one day, an explosion happened and hit a brick wall that had just been built, sending it crashing down and burying him under all of these bricks. But didn't kill him. And actually, the bricks merged with his body, which turned him into the wall. Since he was an actual wall, Spider-Man had a hard time affecting him with any and all physical attacks. Spider-Man's web attacks didn't even work on him. But they later found themselves sitting on a bench and just working things out like two grown adults. A grown man spider and a grown man wall.
Number 10. The Flower Cartel. This one might be lesser known as they are relatively new. Not just an enemy to Wolverine either, but an enemy to likely all of mutant kind and the mutant nation of Krakoa. The Flower Cartel are a group responsible for smuggling the Krakoan miracle flowers, which mutants use to create medicinal drugs for the world in exchange for the global acknowledgement, rights, and respect of their mutant nation. They don't just steal these flowers, but have been using them to create recreational, potent, hallucinogenic drugs. The drugs they've created are so powerful that they often cause the death of users, and may even be affiliated with mind control or possession of those exposed to the drug. We're not really sure yet. In Wolverine's newest series, he teams up with CIA agent Jeff Bannister to try and find out who exactly is behind the Flower Cartel's criminal activities. Number 9. Hobgoblin. I think we all know Hobgoblin fairly well, if you're a Spider-Man fan that is, but did you know that he also tussled with Wolverine and the X-Men? This altercation went down in the Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, where actually Mark Hamill himself voiced Hobgoblin. We see Wolverine, the X-Men, and Spider-Man forced to deal with Hobgoblin in the season 2 episode titled Mutants Revenge, which is a crossover episode with the 90s X-Men animated series. Yay, I love crossovers. After Beast is kidnapped, the X-Men go out looking for him, which leads them to team up with Spider-Man, who is also looking for Hank. But Wolverine doesn't like Spider-Man, and while these two fight one another, Hobgoblin also sees this as a unique opportunity to attack all of the above parties, causing grief for Wolverine while he attempts to rescue Beast from Dr. Herbert Landon, who also is another random, lesser known enemy of Wolverine's, in that episode anyways. Number 8. The Savage Land Mutates. When it comes to other mutant and even mutate groups outside of the X-Men, people are not always as knowledgeable. If you are just discovering mutant kind now, you may not know many other mutant groups outside of the X-Men, and there's sometimes a villainous counterpart, often led by Magneto, the Brotherhood of Mutants, or the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But there are actually a lot more groups than just these two. There are the Morlocks, who often live in the sewers, and there are the Savage Land Mutates, who generally work with Sauron and are, you guessed it, from the Savage Lands. Mutates are like mutants, but the difference is generally that they weren't born with natural abilities which later activated, or natural mutations, but instead they evolved to become mutated, gaining powers or a physical mutation. The Savage Land Mutates are occasionally enemies of the X-Men and by extension Wolverine, who is a member of the heroic mutant team. They even pop up in the 1988 run of Wolverine in issue 69, where Wolverine knocks a lot of them down in order to get to Sauron. Number 7. The Collector. While some may now be more familiar with the character of the Collector himself, thanks to the Guardians of the Galaxy Marvel Cinematic Universe films, fans may not know that he and Wolverine actually had some pretty big beef. What happened between these two? Well, Wolverine basically freed thousands of people from a planet where the Collector had them imprisoned. You see, these people were the survivors of planets that Galactus had destroyed, whom the Collector had, well, collected. But you know, to these people, they were being held against their will, as prisoners, on a shielded planet. A character named Arya, who kind of looks like a space elf, reaches out to Wolverine, seeking his help to free these people, and he answers her plea, getting into a direct conflict with the Collector later on in this story arc known as The Great Escape, part of the 1988 Wolverine series. Basically, if you want lots of random stories, you need to read the 1988 Wolverine series. Number 6. The Iron Monk. The Iron Monk appears to be a villain sent after Wolverine by the Hand while Logan is being held in prison in issue 108 of the Wolverine series that started in 1988. He proves to be a formidable foe and gives Wolverine a pretty good fight for a few pages. I will say I did enjoy it. The Iron Monk, you see, cannot be defeated by any mortal weapon nor any mortal hand. In the end, Wolverine ends up using the Honor Sword bestowed to him by the Silver Samurai. The Honor Sword was forged out of a meteorite by a demon and seems to do the trick, causing the Iron Monk to be reduced to a wisp of pink smoke and a robe. Number 5. Citadel. Despite the fact that Wolverine did later try to help Citadel and likely never truly saw him as an enemy, Citadel resented both Wolverine and Alpha Flight after they stopped him from achieving his goal. Citadel was one of the antagonists in issue 5 of Wolverine First Class, where Citadel was also known then as Weapon Y. Wolverine suspected he was also made by the same people who had put adamantium inside of him, as Citadel had adamantium skin, or an adamantium exoskeleton externally, instead of internally. Citadel was a soldier who was injured in action and ended up being experimented on instead of being properly treated. He wanted the government to be held accountable, and was holding government officials hostage in Quebec, Canada. Wolverine's mission was to deal with the situation, extract the superhuman threat, and secure the hostages. He didn't know that Citadel himself was also a potential victim until it was too late, and the government stepped in to cart Citadel off without Wolverine being able to do or say much about it. Number 4. Abdul Alhazarad. Fun fact, did you know that Abdul Alhazarad in H.P. Lovecraft lore is the character credited with the creation of the Necronomicon? Yeah, he is, and as such, he is also acknowledged as being its creator in the Marvel universe as well. He and Wolverine came to blows in Madripoor when Abdul was trying to take over Tiger's crime syndicate. Abdul attempted to attack Wolverine with a demon, but in the end, Wolverine survived, and Abdul ended up trapped in the same demonic realm his demon pals had come from. Sucks to suck, I guess. Number 3. Damage. For those who are unfamiliar with Damage, he's basically Marvel's version of the Terminator. There's a lot of parallels there anyways. He was originally the human Jamie Ortiz. The Kingpin turned him into a cybernetic being after Damage was brought to the brink of death by Punisher. Kingpin later gave Damage cosmetic surgery to make him look identical to the Punisher as well, and used him against Frank Castle, attempting to break Castle and ruin the Punisher's name by having Damage kill a bunch of innocent people. Wolverine and Damage both ripped one another apart in a fight, and when Punisher finally showed up, he finished Damage off by setting him on fire. Number 2. Geist. Nikolaus Geist was a mad scientist from Germany working on the side of the Axis during World War II. He was working to create a new type of super soldier for Germany, similar to the United States super soldier Captain America, aka Steve Rogers. Roughhouse was his main test subject, and in the end, Wolverine was the one to free Roughhouse and put a stop to Geist. Geist was also a cyborg, but Wolverine cut off his metal shell in an attempt to kill him. It was later revealed that while he was suspected dead and was incapacitated after this fight, he did however manage to survive. However, soon after, another mutant, Magneto, did kill him, so he dead. Number 1. Roughhouse. Going back again to the days of battle in Madripoor for who would get to be the king or queen of crime, and in effect rule Madripoor, Wolverine found himself allied with Yasan Hoan, aka Tiger. It was also during this time that he first fought with Roughhouse, who made his first appearance in issue 4 of Wolverine's series from 1988. Roughhouse was allied with General Koi, and got his superpowers from either his relation to the mythical race of Asgardians, or from being a mutant, or maybe a bit of both. It's a little foggy. Though they are enemies and remained enemies thereafter, Wolverine did still save Roughhouse from Geist, because experimenting on people in Logan's book is just plain wrong. And I think in everyone's book, let's not experiment on people. Can we all agree on that?
Number 10. The actor. Now, I've heard of method actors, but this definitely takes the meaning to a whole other level. An ace infiltrator whose real identity is unknown that worked for the Russians back when they were an evil empire. Like Spider-Man's nemesis the Chameleon, the actor can perfectly impersonate anyone, and he was quite successful at stealing state secrets until he ran up against Tony Stark. The actor traveled to the United States and disguised as Stark easily entered Stark Industries, where he succeeded in not only obtaining some important blueprints, but also discovered that Tony Stark himself was Iron Man. The actor left feeling satisfied with his work and left cleanup duty to his agents. However, Tony was able to overcome them very easily and ended up traveling to the USSR to pose as the actor to foil their evil plans. And talk about a role reversal, am I right? When the real actor returned to his employer, the Red Barbarian, he was shot right as he came because he was deemed a traitor. This didn't actually kill him though, because he later resurfaced to work for the Red Barbarian to once again take down Tony Stark. Why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1963's Tales of Suspense number 42.
Number 9. The Spot. So before he became the Spot, he was known as a guy named Jonathan, a scientist who was working for none other than Kingpin. Yes, so you know he has to be pretty evil working for a guy like Kingpin. Anyways, Kingpin wanted Jonathan to figure out a way to replicate Cloak's powers. Not such an easy task, as Jonathan would soon find out. Instead, he opened up a portal that sent him into a spotted dimension. I wonder if that's where he got his name from. When he was inside that dimension, his skin changed to where he had black spots all over bleached white skin. These spots were all around his entire body, and would allow him to teleport anything that he touches. He hated Spider-Man so much that he even formed a group with some of the people that will show up later on this list. Spoiler alert, one of them may be GRIZZLY or maybe KANGAROO. Maybe, but you'll have to keep watching to find out if that's true. But they were part of the Spider-Man Revenge Squad. Of course, it didn't really work out for him.
Number 8. LCD. LCD is one of Donald Pierce's creations. She is an android who resembles a little girl and was created to kill Wolverine by self-detonating. However, she did not herself want to die, as she also was a smart android who ended up valuing her life. In the end, she reprogrammed the android doppelganger of Wolverine known as Albert, built to lure the real Wolverine into her trap, and instead would become Wolverine's ally. Number 7. Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is also a fantastic villain as well. He is a Russian communist who is known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers. As such, Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship and went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the ability to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost. Because, he's a communist and he can be see-through. And he also became the leader of the Super Apes, because they also got powers. Later on, he would team up with Mole Man and ended up fighting the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank randomly with his team of Super Apes. Number 6. Tiger Shark. One of the first time these two ever crossed paths, it was one of the most random fights in comics. Wolverine and Tiger Shark originally started fighting because La Bandera, a mutant with emotion, manipulation, and energy manipulation abilities, who mainly uses her powers to make people feel more patriotic and empathic, was fighting Tiger Shark. Wolverine stumbled upon their fight and felt attracted to La Bandera and compelled to help her, mainly due to her mutant ability, obviously. Together the two made quick work of Tiger Shark, and then ran away together, because that's how that goes. Number 5. Orchis. If you didn't already know me to be a big Marvel X-Men fan, then this list should solidify that as a thing for you. Yes, it is definitely a thing. I love the X-Men. Orchis is the new big bad for mutant kind introduced originally in the House of X series. House of X and Powers of 10 were the series that launched into this new wonderful X-Men line with Jonathan Hickman at the head, Dawn of X. Orchis is designed to be kind of the ultimate mutant enemy. With mutants coming together and putting their differences aside, it also inspired their enemies, and even allies in some cases, to become wary of them and do pretty much the same. Orchis comprises multiple organizations, each comprising different percentages of the organization, including SHIELD, SWORD, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Hydra, AIM, Armor, and Strike. When I did that, I almost lost my ring. Oh my goodness. Orchis's goal is to monitor and prevent the potential extinction of humans on the planet, and they see mutant evolution and advancement as a threat to that goal. Number 4. Nuke. Many people forget about Nuke, but he is a lesser known villain in the comics who was actually created by Wolverine during his time as a Weapon X operative. He ended up securing Nuke when he was just a child for Project Homegrown. Weapon Plus, with Wolverine's help, would later drive him insane and turn him into a brainwashed cyborg to be used as a weapon. Even years later, these two still come to blows. During Death of Wolverine, Nuke would accept a contract to capture Wolverine and bring him into Viper alive. This would lead to an epic fight between the two, where Wolverine would only end up winning by smashing his own skull repeatedly into Nuke's until he was unable to fight back. Is this the most metal way that a fight has been won in comics? Let me know in the comments. Most metal fights, that's a list we need to do. Number 3. White Sword. White Sword was one of the mutants who was part of the original mutant nation of Okara, which Apocalypse and his wife Genesis ruled. He was one of the leaders who was sent along with his army of 100 champions to defeat the Amenthi who attacked. He was believed to have been victorious, but was also lost to his people as a result. A healer capable of resurrection, he would revive his army daily to fight the Amenthi horde the following day. It's said that this drove the White Sword somewhat insane, and when he later ran into his own people such as Genesis, who herself had been sent out with a mutant army under her command, he saw even them as his enemy and he attacked, defeating Genesis. He will be one of the champions to fight on the side of Araco opposing Krakoa in the Ten of Swords tournament. He also happens to look similar to Apocalypse, but with different armor. Maybe you don't see that, but I definitely see that. Number 2. Gorgon. If you don't know the Gorgon and this pretty awesome story featuring him, you should. During the third Wolverine series from 2003, Wolverine ends up getting entangled with the Gorgon when he is attempting to locate Ichiro, the missing son of one of his dead fiance's cousins, who has been kidnapped. I say one of his dead fiancés because I feel like Wolverine's got a few of those. Gorgon is a telepathic mutant who, as his name implies, can turn those who make direct eye contact with him into stone. Gorgon ends up capturing Wolverine and giving him over to the Hand, who brainwashed him and turned him into their own agent. However, Wolverine would later break free of their control and would even go on to kill Gorgon using his own claws to reflect Gorgon's deadly gaze back at him, transforming Gorgon into stone before shattering him. But don't worry, Gorgon would be resurrected later on and return. Gotta love those old mythology references. Comics taking old stories and making them new again, and also never letting people die. Number 1. Ogun. Ogun was once Wolverine's martial arts mentor and a powerful sorcerer and telepath, but later became Logan's enemy after being spurned by Wolverine, joining the Yakuza and going on to kidnap, train, and brainwash Kitty Pryde during the Kitty Pryde and Wolverine story. Ogun even managed to turn Kitty Pryde against Logan, sending her to attack him when Wolverine had come to rescue her. Fortunately, Wolverine was able to break Ogun's control over Kitty. In the end, Kitty fought Ogun but was unable to defeat her former master. However, Wolverine was able to do so. After being beaten but spared by Wolverine, Ogun attacked Kitty once more and was killed by Wolverine as a result. Of course, this is comics, so this wouldn't be the last we'd see of Ogun by a long shot. Thank you so much for watching, Nerd Squad. What are some of your favorite lesser known Wolverines?
Number 10. Death Urge. Similar to how the DC Universe has the Black Flash acting as messenger of death, Marvel decided to dip their toes into that realm as well, and out came Death Urge, a wraith-like superhuman entity with the ability to fly at some ridiculous speeds, turn intangible, and of course, pull various weapons like spears and swords out of their body. When these weapons strike Death Urge's targets, they immediately die with a blackness spreading from the spot where the weapon struck and passed through the target's body. If the weapon happens to pass through someone other than Death Urge's target, that person only feels a numbing coldness but will not actually blacken or die. Death Urge's only targets are apparently only those who have craved death and oblivion to some degree, so I guess I better be on the lookout. Not a whole lot is known about Death Urge besides the fact that he once served Oblivion and had a very close relationship with Craig Hollis. In Hollis's earlier life, Death Urge acted as both a guardian angel and a bad influence for him, goading him into dangerous situations in an attempt to awaken him to his own immortality. However, this relationship was damaged beyond repair when Hollis's girlfriend killed herself and Death Urge arrived to collect her soul, with Hollis believing that Death Urge had goaded Terry to commit suicide and from then on viewed him as a tormentor. He has been seen up against not only the Avengers but the Fantastic Four as well, and each time he has caused some serious trouble, so it's kinda weird that he hasn't had too many appearances.
Number 9. Mole Man. Mole Man originally appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 1, but has become a villain to not just the FF over time, but the Avengers as well. In fact, despite not being one of the strongest villains around, the Avengers even at one point had to team up with the FF to defeat Mole Man, who had kidnapped Sue Storm. Mole Man became a villain because he felt that society had rejected him. He aimed to take revenge on the world for this. Mole Man has taken on more than one Avengers team as well, even having beef with not officially sanctioned West Coast Avengers, believing the team had attacked his home of Subterranea located beneath Monster Island. He is also tangled with Tony Stark's Mighty Avengers as well.
Number 8. Starstalker. Varanus aka Starstalker is a dragon-like alien monster from the planet Vormir. By wrapping himself in a cocoon, he was able to transform himself into a larger, more powerful form known as his ionic combustion form. In this form, Varanus was able to absorb the ions of anything around him, allowing him to drain the energy of enemies such as Thor or even shorting out Iron Man's armor. But that's not all, because he frequently used this power to gorge himself on entire planets, destroying them in the process. After attacking and defeating Krull, this monster caught the attention of the Avengers, and although he was able to hide from them for a short period of time, Mantis was eventually able to find him and the fight ensued. Starstalker was able to dispatch the Avengers pretty easily by taunting them with stories of his origins while refusing to reveal his weakness, before spinning himself into another ionic cocoon to boost his power to destroy the Earth. Eventually, Mantis was able to figure out that his weakness was solar energy, and her and Vision used this weakness to just turn him into stone.
Number 7. Apocalypse's children. / First Horsemen, I suppose. These kids are the ones who obviously inspired Apocalypse in the future when it came to naming and creating his horsemen thereafter. Their names are the same as those Apocalypse would normally take for his horsemen: war, death, famine, and pestilence. These children made their first appearance recently and then resurfaced once more extremely recently in the newest X-Men series. They hold a grudge against Apocalypse, who they believe abandoned his family. They blame him for such, and while you might think that Apocalypse is a villain, so who cares, right now he is aligned with the other mutants of Krakoa, and as such is actually considered mostly a good guy, for now anyways. He did do some shady stuff, so not so nice, Apocalypse. Or however we're saying your name now, Krakoan symbols with an A in the middle, however I say that in Krakoan.
Number 6. Cyclop. No, not Cyclops, Cyclop. Also known as One Eye for, well, obvious reasons, Cyclop was a member of an ancient insect alien race that worshipped the Dark Gods, and because of this, Cyclop was eventually chosen by the Dark Gods to find a power source for them in exchange for his race getting to conquer Earth. He was quickly able to capture the Hulk, however the other members of the Avengers were able to defeat him relatively easily, and this resulted in Cyclop losing the Hulk. Deemed as incompetent, the Dark Gods abandoned him as their agent, and he was dumped into the microverse by them, with no way to return to his original size or home world. Still wanting to impress the Dark Gods in any possible way, he devised and executed a plan that turned him into the god of the microverse. He was confronted by the Hulk and Jarella, but managed to hypnotize and enslave the Hulk. However, that didn't last for too long, so out of desperation, Cyclops just accidentally annihilated himself with one of his devices. Poor little evil guy.
Number 5. BLOODSCREAM. BLOODSCREAM would end up partnering with Wolverine's other lesser-known nemesis that we talked about on the part 1 of this list, Roughhouse. While many associate these two as being partners in crime, this isn't the only Wolverine villain that BLOODSCREAM has teamed up with in the past. He has also teamed up with Albert and LCD as well, and in the Old Man Logan universe partnered up with both Kraven and Roughhouse in an attempt to help Kraven capture Old Man Logan.
Number 4. Sons of the Serpent. Now over the years there have been a total of 7 iterations of the Sons of the Serpent, so let's make our way through all call them, shall we? This group was initially formed by General Chen, and let's just say they were all about doing some pretty awful things against non-natives of their country. The original group was disbanded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers after they unmasked General Chen as their leader. And then the second group didn't show up until a little bit while later, but they were also quickly defeated and disbanded by the Avengers and Black Panther. Financed by J.C. Pennyworth, the third iteration was all about destroying buildings in Harlem, but the Defenders had no trouble stopping them. Head over to LA after and you'd find the fourth iteration selling drugs and weapons under the leadership of the Hate Monger. Thankfully, War Machine shut them down for good and cut off all of their suppliers as well. The fifth iteration was super into magic and mysticism and led by SERPENT himself, however it's actually unknown if they were ever stopped, so honestly they could be practicing to this very day. The six Sons of the Serpent controlled New York's justice system for a period of time, and they would have been a much bigger threat had they not been stopped by Daredevil. And then finally, the seventh iteration of the team went back to their roots and were patrolling the American border, not letting anyone into the country unless they were a citizen. Not only that though, they were also sending some of these immigrants to Carl Malice as test subjects. Thankfully though, Captain America caught wind of this and their villainous ways were put to an end.
Number 3, Romulus. Does everyone remember Romulus? One of the most weirdly epic and yet short-lived villains of almost all time in Wolverine's rogue history. He had this huge buildup, and we went on to find out that he was an ancient villain from prehistoric times, only to find out that this was all a lie and apparently a ruse to distract Wolverine. He was, however, the villain responsible for cutting Daken out of his dead mother, Itsu's womb, and for training him and turning him into a killing machine. He manipulated Daken from day one, helping to turn him against his father, and was the one responsible for helping him to bond the melted down Muramasa blade to Daken's claws. Or at least helped him get the idea. Because, you know, the Tinkerer obviously did that in actuality. I don't even know if Romulus knows how to melt metal. Probably.
Number 2, the Circus of Crime. Now much like the Sons of the Serpent, the Circus of Crime has gone through many iterations, but let's just focus on the modern eras this time. Currently composed of the Ringmaster aka Maynard Tybalt, Bruto the Strongman, Clown, Tina the Fat Lady, and the Fire Eater, the Circus of Crime is kind of exactly what you'd expect after hearing their name. A circus that does crime. They followed a general formula while committing their crimes. They would give a performance before a large audience, then at some point, the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device concealed in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members would then rob the audience, who wouldn't remember anything about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and then the performance would just continue. They clashed with superheroes on a pretty regular basis, the most notable being the Hulk, Spider-Man, and of course the Avengers. Funnily enough though, one time Matt Murdock himself offered to defend them in court after having helped defeat them alongside Spider-Man. Crazy.
Number 1, Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a villainous entourage who appear as blue-collar sort of construction workers. In reality, they are Dirk Garthwaite, who was originally Wrecker, and his team comprised of Thunderbell, aka Elliot Franklin, previously a physicist, Bulldozer, previously a military sergeant known as Henry Camp, Pile Driver, aka Brian Kaluski, who used to be a farmer. They received their powers when they all came into contact with the crowbar as it was struck by some kind of magical lightning. They have attempted to take hold of the Avengers Mansion on more than one occasion, teaming up with the Masters of Evil during one of their attempts and kidnapping Misty Knight and using her to control Iron Fist another time. They are usually handily defeated by the Avengers when they go up against the team, however. It seems that magical construction equipment and mystical abilities, which are tied to that equipment, is not really enough to defeat the Avengers, I guess. Number 10, Red Goblin. Red Goblin is the amalgamation of the Carnage symbiote, combined with Norman Osborn's Green Goblin. When you mix a blood-fused symbiote like Carnage together with the insane Green Goblin, you get Red Goblin, a pretty fearsome foe to be reckoned with. Spider-Man had to renounce his mantle to protect his family and fight Red Goblin as Peter Parker, and had to also call in backup to defeat this epic version of Norman Osborn introduced a few years back. This whole experience as well severely messed with Norman's mind, and later resulted in him believing that he was in fact Carnage, aka Cletus Cassidy, and was not at all Norman Osborn, forgetting all about that life until another mysterious villain, Kindred, gave him back his sanity. Thanks, Kindred, that's so nice of you. Number 9, Kindred. Kindred is the Spider-Man villain who was first introduced in the 2018 series of Amazing Spider-Man in issue 1. Kindred itself is a demon from hell who used to be human and seems to have had a close relationship with Peter Parker Parker in life. However, what we didn't know for a long time was just who Kindred's true identity was. We simply knew the villain wanted revenge on Pete and on Norman Osborn, and that they had demonic powers in addition to having 2 pet centipedes, which Kindred often uses to assist them and do their bidding. Recently, Kindred's true identity was revealed to be that of Harry Osborn, but some fans are still hesitant to take this reveal at face value, believing it could be a misdirect and that we may still not yet know Kindred's true identity. So many people have so many theories. And before we move on to our number 8 spot, just a reminder, if you love us like we love you, show it to us by giving this video a thumbs up, and thank you for doing so. Number 8, the Griever at the end of all things. So I always want to call this villain the Griever at the end of the universe, but that must be because I'm a huge Hitchhiker's Guide fan, and that's just bubbling back to the surface in my mind. But it's not the Griever at the end of the universe, it's the Griever at the end of all things. The Griever at the end of all things was a new villain who showed up and seemingly killed Molecule Man, proving how powerful and scary she was as early as her first appearance. I gotta say, I think her design is cool, but I'm kinda disappointed that she hasn't resurfaced in any Fantastic Four issues since her first fight with the FF team. The fight was so epic that the Fantastic Four actually had to call in a ton of backup, calling on temporary and rotating members of the team to join them, and finally revealing after the events on Battleworld and the recreation of the multiverse that they actually weren't dead as all their fellow heroes were made to believe, but were actually alive and rebuilding everything in secret. So that let that cat out of the bag. Number 7. Lazier. Lazier, or Azrael as he is also known, claims to be another form of death, one that we've seen Wolverine face before, and although we don't always see it, Lazier is an angel of death that Wolverine in theory is forced to face every time he has a near-death experience. Lazier battles for Logan's life, but Wolverine manages to fight him back each time, prevailing and ensuring his life belongs to him only. However, should Wolverine fail to defeat Azrael, the being would then claim his life and he would die. Apparently. Number 6. Dark Carnage. Dark Carnage is like Cletus Cassidy but dead, and brought back to life using the Grendel symbiote and then turned into a towering skeletal monster that is hungry for your spine. Well, maybe not your spine specifically, but if you bonded with a symbiote ever, alive or dead, he's hungry for that spine. It's finger licking good. Delicious spines. Dark Carnage was sort of the final phase of Cletus Cassidy, who sought to awaken Null by gathering all the codices from within all those beings who had ever bonded with a symbiote. Doing so would awaken the Dark God, which was just the kind of chaotic party Cassidy was all about. In attempting to do this, he perished but was ultimately successful as Null is now awake and headed for Venom and Earth. Cletus may be gone as a result, but the villain has died many times and returned in many different incarnations, such as this new one, Dark Carnage. I'm excited to see if he comes back again, and when he does, just which version of Carnage we'll see next. Maybe some kind of dark immortal Carnage. Number 5. Triune Understanding. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have more sinister motives. Tremont specifically used the organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Pagan in an attack against the Avengers, in which he then blamed the superhero team for all the destruction that the battle had caused. The crazy thing is, although this organization is not one of the well-known Avengers adversaries, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a time. Number 4. Horticulture. Horticulture have to be some of my favorite of the newest villains and villain groups to surface. They are a group of elderly women and botanists who are focused on preserving the planet, focusing on returning it to a more pristine state. In other words, they want to make sure people stop messing everything up by taking control of everyone's food source, in essence controlling plant life and crops, in order to decide who gets to live and kind of who gets to die. As of right now, there are 4 women who are part of the group that we know of: Lily, Edith, Opal, and Augusta. They also made a brilliant and hilarious appearance in the limited Empire X-Men series, which, by the way, if you haven't read, is pretty hilarious and great, and I do recommend it. You don't really have to read Empire to enjoy it either, you just need to know the general plot of that event to enjoy the story of this 4-issue series featuring my fave new villains, Horticulture. Number 3. Chaos King. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the Epic Fear itself in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and kind of became overshadowed by it. Ultimately, it also felt a lot less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikoboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse the effects of life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life, while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though when it came to their magic type. Number 2. The Viscora. The Viscora are a mysterious alien race that made a brief appearance in Cable Volume 4 Issue 5 as part of the Ten of Swords event. We run into them on the Sword Headquarters space station known as Peak 7. It seems the Viscora swiftly invaded Sword's orbital HQ and within 10 minutes had pretty much decimated almost the entire crew. We know this from the log featured in the issue. Those few surviving crew had no other option but to completely shut down the station's power in order to prevent the Viscora from progressing any further with their invasion. To prevent anyone from potentially awakening the station or the Viscora, they didn't send out any SOS calls at the time of powering everything down, and essentially just kind of disappeared. Opaluna Saturnine was the one who compelled Cable and his parents, Marvel Girl and Cyclops, to awaken the station once more. Though her motives remain unknown, it's speculated that she wanted to harm the family to help prevent Cable and possibly all mutants from being able to enter the Otherworld tournament, although her motives are still very foggy in my opinion. The Viscora seem obsessed with cleansing, dissecting, and learning of any alien life forms. In other words, they pretty much want to kill everyone. Number 1. Donald Blake. Thor issue number 9 of the newest run from 2020 starts off a new story arc titled Prey. At the end of the issue, we see the return of Donald Blake, a former persona of Thor's who basically became his own person but then was trapped in a hell dimension. Driven mad, Dr. Donald Blake has returned, escaped his prison, and seems to be looking for revenge on all of the gods. This is a refreshing and interesting take on an old character, bringing him back as a villain now. It's what I really find intriguing about this new run on Thor, which I thought was maybe going to be trying to take us back to ones with, you know, the title character himself and everything else, and yet we have amazing things like this happening. Donald Blake returning to us not as the same old ally, but as a villain. Shortly after escaping, Dr. Blake is confronted by Loki, so that's the god that he deals with first. Surprisingly, Blake makes quick work of Loki, vowing that he will no longer be a refuge for any god ever again, and they will no longer be able to hide from him. Thor, I think he's coming for you. I think so.